The Black Hole, a novel by Alan Dean Foster. Chapter 3. Full power on all thrusters. Give me 100% additional on our roll quads. Holland was frantically jabbing at controls, eyes darting from one readout to the next. Each appeared more threatening than its neighbor. On the screen, the Cygnus remained peaceful and stable, receding behind them. Malignant invisibility smote the tiny vessel. Back near power, several sensitive monitors ruptured, sending highly compressed gases whistling wildly down corridors and into unsealed rooms. "What the hell happened?" Pizer demanded of Silent Fates. "What happened?" "The zone of null G," Holland spoke rapidly, working at his console. "Its parameters are variable. I thought we had at least a couple of kilometers of quiet in which to turn, but the radius of the stable zone shifted while we were passing close to the Cygnus. It shrank inward." "My fault." He was stammering through clenched teeth. "It was my fault. We should have been monitoring it somehow." "Don't blame yourself." Pizer shifted power from one weakened thruster to another, balanced the propulsion system as best he could, given their wild course. "No one else thought of it. Besides, there's no way we could have monitored it. How can you monitor something you don't understand? We probably don't even have the instruments for it." Holland thought, "All right, Charlie, you're right. Time for fixing the blame later." A warning light began flashing for attention on the left of his console. Vincent noticed it an instant before Holland. "Air brake amidships." The robot spoke calmly. "Losing storage pressure." He studied fresh information, correlated it with what the computer was trying to tell him. "Regeneration system failure. Seals are forming in the system. Pressure is holding, sir, but cannot do so indefinitely." "Do what you can with it, Vincent. I haven't got time now. Charlie, give us a full burst at 180 degrees on my count on the roll quads. If we don't correct our tumble, we might as well turn off the engines." "Standing by." Pizer's fingers rested tensely on two separate contact switches. "Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pizer impressed the switches. The Palomino stopped tumbling violently. The unexpected jolt nearly threw Durant, McRae, and Booth from their positions. Overpressurized beyond design, the airlines running through the lab reacted to the abrupt cessation of spin and the corresponding shift in the ship's artificial gravity by releasing their pent-up force. Compressed air hissed into the room. The Palomino was tumbling again, less severely now and in the opposite direction. McRae shouted toward the pickup, "Dan, we've got a line break back here, too." Durant was hastily examining the requisite gauges. "Readout shows primary and secondary carry lines ruptured. We'll be breathing soup pretty soon, and that for only a little while if we don't get them fixed." "Then get on it," was Holland's reply. "We've stabilized enough for you to move around, but watch yourselves. I'm not promising anything." He thought, including living out the day. McRae was first out of her chair. She hurried to help Booth unlock his restraints. Their problem now was not a lack of air, but a surplus of it. If the pressure in the system dropped too low, the regenerators would fail. Emergency supplies would reprime the regenerators, but more than likely they were breathing some emergency atmosphere already. When that supply was gone, they would have only the old air circulating loosely through the ship to breathe. That would turn stale, then unbreathable, all too quickly. Before too long, they would suffocate. All the regular crew had some training in ship maintenance except Harry Booth. Such diversified expertise was necessary with so small a complement. Kate struggled to recall the schematics of the ship's atmosphere systemology, knowing their lives depended on it, on that and on Dan and Charlie and Vincent halting their plunge. She thought, no use worrying about that possibility. If they failed to stop their fall, and soon she would be flattened before she knew what was happening to her. Concentrate on the regeneration system and let the others worry about keeping us alive long enough to enjoy my repairs. Pizer adjusted the thrusters yet again, muttered, "Never rains." The rest was not audible. "We're doing better, Charlie, but not enough better. Full power on attitude quads A and B. We're going in at an angle now, but we're still going in. The first officer switched his own instrumentation over to manual control. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, the first officer activated selected external adjusters. Again, the Palomino reacted, not as violently this time and with great precision. If we can just bring her around, Holland murmured nervously, we'll have a fighting chance. He knew it had to be finished soon. If they fell much further into the grip of that unrelenting gravity, they would forever lose all chance of breaking free. Vincent's cautionary remark about the durability of the thrusters under such strain came back to him, but he pushed it from his mind. Either the units would continue to function, or they would fail. He had to assume the former because it was fatal to consider the latter. For a few seconds he toyed with the idea of slamming on the superlight drive, which should be sufficient to pull them clear. Yeah, he thought, in pieces. He would leave that for a last resort and pray, if he had to do it, that the equations were all wrong. The superlight drive operated with wonderful efficiency in a massless environment. Around such mass, it displayed a disconcerting tendency to push against the ship instead of against nothing. Under such circumstances, it could push a ship apart, also the contents of said ship, which included any crew. Hence the need for powerful sublight engines to shove a starship out into the void, where it could function properly and harmlessly. A new warning light came on. Again it was Vincent who noticed it first. Hull breach indication, Captain. Serious? Not immediately. The number 4 hatch cover just blew outward. The section has been sealed. What's in number 4 bay? A pause while the robot checked inventory, then. Miscellaneous supplies, sir. Non-regenerable, some organics. What kind? If it's survey equipment or samples, we can forget it. I'm afraid not, sir. Manifest shows pharmaceuticals among the contents. Damn. We can't risk losing that stuff, and we could do just that if we're jolted hard enough or if the artificial grav goes out. Be just about right for us to break free of this and then die on the way home for lack of the right medicine to treat some otherwise minor infection. I agree, sir. Vincent removed his armature from the console socket and swiveled to depart from the cockpit. I'll go outside and secure the hatch. I don't like it, but watch yourself. This is more pull than we've ever had to deal with. If you break loose, you won't be sucked in much faster than the ship, but your thrusters might not be enough to boost you back to the hull, and there's no way we could maneuver to retrieve you. Yes, sir. I am cognizant of the dangers, sir. Rest assured, I will exercise utmost caution. Vincent floated from the cockpit, moving carefully, but at high speed, back through the corridors. Scanning the readouts, Holland's eyes fell again on the still winking lights, which reminded him of the damage to their air system. Alex? Harry? He called into the pickup. You still okay back there? Rocky, but no injuries, Dan. Durant sounded tired. We're still working on the lines that broke here in the lab. Leave those for Kate. She's faster than either of you. Check out the damage farther back, where the initial interruption occurred. Check. Durant started for the doorway. Let's go, Harry. Good luck here, Kate. She was already running a diagnostic pen over the multiple tube fracture. You fix the first headache, Alex. I'll handle this one. She waved the pen at him, and he smiled back, each grin for the other's benefit and not an expression of humor. Not now. Apply sealer to the edge of the brake, she told herself, trying to see the instruction tape, forcing it to unspool once more inside her head. Place sealant alloy between sealer and far end of brake. She continued like that, working steadily if slowly, her body tense in expectancy of further jolts and shudders. Normally, Vincent would not have bothered with a tether. His internal thrusters provided enough power for him to fly with confidence around any ship, but this was not normal space they were spinning through, and Vincent was programmed to be prudent. So he double-checked to make sure the high-strength metal weave cable was attached securely to himself and to the ship. Then he slid back the exterior hatch of the airlock and made his way outside. The black hole was a dark nothingness resting in the center of a glowing vortex of radiant gas and larger clumps of matter. It attracted his attention only briefly. He was also programmed to be curious, though less so than humans. So he ignored the mesmerizing view of the stellar maelstrom and turned his optics instead on the various projections extruding from the Palomino's hull. He had to make his way around them so that his extendable magnetic limbs would remain firmly in contact with the ship's skin. As he moved slowly across the hull back toward the free-floating hatch to be resecured, he was aware of a steady thunder reverberating around him. It was a thunder no human could have heard, a purely electronic thunder, the whale dying matter generated as it was crushed out of existence. It possessed almost a certain poignancy no human could have appreciated, for in many ways Vincent was closer in structure to the meteoric material plunging past him to destruction than he was to the creature known as man. Indeed, he mused, I am the same stuff, differently formed and imbued with intelligence. I am cousin both to meteor and to man. Then his thoughts turned to more prosaic matters, a loose hatch and the possibility of uncertain footing. I do wonder why I was programmed to think in so many human metaphors, he thought. I have no feet, therefore, technically speaking, I am incapable of losing my footing. Fortunately, his creators and designers had foreseen the possibility of such confusion arising in his electronic mind and had counter-programmed a restraining, pacifying feature into all such mechanicals. Humor. Holland and Pizer were unaware of Vincent's private musings as they struggled to stabilize the ship, but they were very much aware of Vincent. Give me a check on his progress, Charlie. Pizer moved to comply, leaving part of his attention on the still vacillating readouts before him. Vincent, do you read? This is Charlie, Vincent. A loud sizzle, like 1,000 tons of bacon frying, hissed back at him from the speaker. He tried again. Vincent, do you read? What's it like out there? Again the sound of the vast, cosmic cookpot. He looked across at Holland, shook his head. No response. You heard what we're getting? I don't like it, Pizer started to comment, but Holland cut him off. Yes, I know. I've been saying that a lot lately. Take it easy on me, will you? He may be encountering more difficulty than I thought he would. He hesitated, then after a moment's consideration said, I hate to bother Kate. It's a strain for her, and she's busy enough as it is. Pizer said nothing. Holland finally addressed the comm pickup. Kate? She flashed a last burst with the sealer, set it aside, and moved within easy reception range of the comm unit. I'm here, Dan. How are you coming on those lines? Getting there. It's easy to work the sealer, but hard to be neat about it. I remember the diagrams pretty well, though, and records are helping me make sure I'm emplacing the new modules properly. You'd better, or we'll find ourselves breathing hydrogen instead of air, he teased. Then he continued more seriously. I don't like to trouble you with this, Kate, but we either have a transmission problem or Vincent's receiver is out. In any case, we can't contact him. See if you can S-Blink with him. I need to know how he's doing. I understand, Dan. She sat down in her chair, forced herself to relax. I'll give him a call. Appreciate it. Kate closed her eyes, not that it was necessary to the process, but doing so helped her concentrate by eliminating sources of possible distraction. She did not need her eyes to see Vincent any more than he needed his electronic optics to see back at her. That's what the experts had told her. They had explained everything in detail when they had inquired if she wished to undergo the operation. That had been 10 years ago, though in fact she had feared the operation. She had covered her instinctive reaction so professionally, with such naturalness and so convincingly, that no one had thought to test her for truthfulness. The decision had to be a voluntary one. Her intelligence and ability had qualified her without subsidiary tests, so had her psych profile. She had known that a scientist able to engage S-Blink with a correspondingly equipped mechanical had a tremendous advantage over colleagues in wangling important and interesting assignments. Like thousands of others, she had wanted to be selected for deep space research. In the highly competitive academic free-for-all that surrounded such applications, every advantage one had over one's colleagues was important. S-Blink ability could be critical. It was such a powerful plus because not every operation resulted in the ability to link. Also, not every volunteer came out from under the operation. Or sometimes one would emerge into consciousness with parts of his mental self badly confused, sometimes permanently confused. Kate McCrae's operation had been one of those that proved completely successful. She well remembered her first and last sight of the S-Blink itself, a tiny metal cylinder half the size of the nail on her little finger. It was buried inside her skull now, always ready and able to translate her properly conceived thoughts to a receptive machine unit and to receive impulses in turn from units equipped to broadcast. Sometimes getting it right was more of a strain than anyone imagined, including Holland. But the particular rapport Kate had acquired with mechanicals such as Vincent made the risk and strain worthwhile. Now she adjusted her thoughts as she had been trained to do, letting them flow outward. It pleased her to regard the process as something wonderfully magical, rather than as the simple transference of wave structures from one point in space to another. An alarmingly long time, several seconds passed before the robot eventually responded. "I'm sorry, Dr. Kate, I was occupied." "You mean preoccupied," she thought back at him. "No, occupied. I am never preoccupied. No one can technically be preoccupied, as that implies Not now, Vincent. Save the philosophical homilies for later. You're okay? I am still attached to the ship and functioning as intended, if that's what you mean." "You know it is, you disreputable hunk of scrap." "Now, Doctor, no flattery when I'm working. You will distract me." "Unlikely. Where are you?" A brief pause, then, "Nearly over Bay 4. I should be able to see the hatch cover soon." "Good." She fought to adjust her brain to create audible words, spoke dreamily toward the comm pickup. "Dan, I've made contact with Vincent." "Fine. He's all right out there?" "Yes, and nearly in sight of the hatch, he says." "Keep us posted." She turned her thoughts back inward. "Any trouble?" "Electromagnetic effects like I've never experienced, and hope never to experience again. Makes my skin crawl." McCrae smiled, eyes still peacefully shut. Vincent could sound so human when he wanted to, that she had to remind herself he was a machine, an artificial construct of printed circuits and cold alloy, much like the Palomino. "I'm in sight of the hatch now," he told her, the voice echoing inside her head. "Over the hatch opening now." She waited, knowing he was inspecting the damage. His analysis was typically succinct. "The concussion apparently caused the emergency explosive bolts securing the hatch to misfire. Fortunately, only the bolts on the normally latch side fired, or I'd have no hatch here to fix. I will make temporary repairs by welding it shut." "Good enough." She relaxed further, found herself thinking about Dan as Vincent worked, about his reaction to her whenever the S-Blink was brought up. He knows it's there permanently inside me. Does he secretly regard me as some kind of mutated freak, part human, part machine? She knew some people reacted that way to those equipped with the links, and wondered if that was why Dan was always so kind and gentle with her, or was it something more, as she had often hoped. Of course, he had never given any definite indication that he regarded the presence of the link as anything abnormal, but that didn't mean that. Vincent was thinking at her again. "I've inserted vacuum seal around the edges of the hatch and repositioned the cover. Am now activating my sealer." She could almost see the robot, visualize the barrel-shaped form secured by line and magnetic lower limbs to the Palomino's hull. One arm would be traveling with great precision over the edge of the hatch, a beam of intense red light emerging from its tip. The vacuum seal would turn molten under the heat of that beam, as would the metal of the hull beneath it. The result, when it cooled, would be a crystalline structure not quite metal, not quite ceramic. It could not be cut away except with the facilities of a zero-G shipyard. Hatch 4 would be useless for the remainder of their journey, but the precious pharmaceuticals stored inside would be in no danger of drifting or being thrown out. Later, the bay could be repressurized and entered safely. The seal Vincent was executing would be as airtight as the rest of the hull. A voice, shatteringly loud and crude, interrupted her musing. "Kate, how's he coming? You still with him?" "I'll check, Dan. Right now he's quoting a flight instructor he once knew. There are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are very few old, bold pilots." She tuned in on Vincent, all right, Pizer murmured. "Let's hope we disprove that maxim. Just a few more degrees, Charlie." Vincent, how are you coming?" McRae asked silently. A gratified mechanical responded, "Finishing the last of it, Dr. Kate." "Dan, he's secured the hatch." "Good. Let me know when he's back inside." Holland turned his attention to his first officer. "Charlie, we're holding our own here, but that's not good enough. She's threatening to destabilize and send us tumbling again. We've got to get her around. Maximum power on." He checked a brace of gauges. "Quad thrusters E and H, half thrust on A and G." "Working," replied Pizer, carefully making the requisite adjustments. The ship responded. Holland switched a second speaker on as the communicator buzzed for attention. He remained in communication with the lab and Kate, adding the new call from power. "That you, Alex?" "Check, Dan." Durant's voice was strained. "We can only effect temporary repairs back here, and that only to the secondaries. It's a mess. Maybe you and Charlie will get a chance to come back here and refine what Harry and I have done." "I doubt we could do much more, Alex. I just pilot 'em, I don't build 'em." "That's what we need back here, Dan. A construction engineer with a full internal plumbing shop. I'm afraid that we'll eventually lose our air supply unless we can replace the critically damaged modules in the main regenerator complex." "Damn, you're sure of that?" "You ought to see what's left of the regenerator's internals and monitors. Looks like a particle beam played through them. You know, you can't fix any of those microchip links. All you can do is replace them. We can seal over and set the larger components back in place, but you know better than I that it'll all be for nothing unless the rest are replaced, and we don't carry any of the necessary replacements." Holland thought a moment. "How about canalizing the necessary chips from the secondaries?" "Maybe," was Durant's reply, "but I doubt it." "Why?" "Because some of the chips in the secondaries are so weakened from overload they could shatter if we try fooling with their ambient temperatures or voltages. Then we'd lose the secondaries in addition to the main system. But I agree it may come to trying that." "Let's hope not, Alex. Let me know when you and Harry have finished. Maybe I can come back and have a look." "Will do." Holland switched off, knowing the futility of making a personal inspection of the damage. He had added his final comment to placate Durant. If the scientist couldn't fix the system, it was because the parts were not available, as he had said. If they didn't have any replacements, the finest respiratory system technician on Earth couldn't do any better. Vincent shut off the flow of sealant. A moment later he shut off power to his arm and examined his handiwork. The seal was clean, flush to the hull, and appeared tight. No one could tell for certain about the last until Bay 4 could be repressurized and tested for air leaks. But he was confident his work would stand that test. He turned his optics away from the hatch preparatory to starting back toward the lock he had used to leave the ship, and his confidence was lessened by the sight that greeted him. Neatly severed by age and the wear and tear it had received against the rim of the lock, his cable tether drifted lazily past him. Calmly, he reported the break to McRae. Her first reaction was concern. "Are you still secured to the ship, Vincent?" She knew as well as Holland that if the robot had somehow slipped free of the hull, he was lost. "Still secure, and awaiting instructions, Dr. Kate." She spoke hurriedly into the pickup. "Dan, it's Vincent. He's finished sealing the hatch, but his cable tether parted." He's okay for now, but without the tether, he has no backup if he loses physical contact with the hull. His thrusters may not be enough to get him back. He wants to know how you want him to proceed. Pizer was already half out of his chair. Someone has to take him another secured line so he can get back safely. I'll go after him. Holland threw him a sharp look. Stay put, Charlie. You've plenty to do right here. The first officer looked askance at Holland. You don't mean that, Dan. What if it were one of us out there? Vincent is one of us. As to the other, I wouldn't let you go no matter who it was. Stay at your post. What if it were Kate? Holland didn't change his expression. The same. She knows that. You ought to. He spoke into the comm. We can't risk anyone else out there now, Kate. Not till we regain full control. Tell Vincent to hang on, to stay at his present location until further notice. I don't want him moving around untethered until we've stabilized our attitude. Too much chance he'll be jarred loose. McRae relayed the information to the waiting robot. I concur, came the prompt reply. I don't like sitting out here, but the captain is right, I believe. Transmission stopped. McRae strained frantically, sweat beading her forehead from the effort of projecting. She knew Vincent's human analog programming did not include breaking off a conversation in the middle of a sentence without some kind of explanation. Vincent? Vincent? Report! A slight but unexpected jolt had produced exactly the result Holland had feared. Despite Vincent's dutifully remaining in one place, flailing metal arms groped for protrusions, missed as the robot began to drift away from the ship, back toward the stern and distant bottom of the gravity well. Vincent decided not to chance the thrusters unless forced to. There were other methods of remaining in contact with the Palomino. The cable he fired from his body had been designed to enable him to pull objects through free space toward him. Now he utilized it to pull himself back to the ship. As he was reeling himself in, he was able to respond positively to McRae's urgent call. I'm all right, Dr. Kate. I momentarily lost my grip, but I am secure again. I will be more conscious now of the forces operating on my body here. I now have physical as well as magnetic adhesion. Please do not worry. Kate? She heard the dim voice, took a breath and replied, It's okay now, Dan. Vincent slipped away for a moment, but he's reattached himself. He says he's more secure now than he was before, and that he'll be more careful. She gave a brief description of what had happened, relaying the robot's own words. Pizer listened, then moved as if to leave his chair again. Stay at your post, Charlie. What the hell are you made of? He's still stuck out there. Next time he might not be able to get back. Holland chose to ignore the question and the challenge behind it. Pizer was operating, like the rest of them, like the ship, under abnormal pressure. As captain, Holland was not permitted the psychological release of insubordination. He would not reprimand Charlie for making use of it, but wished only that he too had some higher authority to yell at. Instead of snapping back at his first officer, Holland kept himself under control and spoke quietly toward the pickup. Kate, tell Vincent we're starting to make some progress. We're backtracking to that zero-G bubble surrounding the Cygnus. Once we're inside the field again, he can hop and skip back to the lock. She nodded, though there was no one to see her. The information was relayed to the robot. As she was finishing, Durant and Booth returned to the lab. Both men were mentally flayed, the close mechanical repair work having proved itself as debilitating as any heavy physical labor. They were concentrated out. Neither disturbed McRae by listing his accomplishments. Durant waited until the wrinkles above her eyes had smoothed out, and some of the tenseness had visibly left her body before asking what the S-Blink conversation had involved. Looks like Dan's instincts were right, she told them. We've had trouble. What's wrong, Kate? Booth asked quickly. Problems with the hatch repair? Not exactly, she murmured. Her eyes were still closed. It's Vincent. His tether broke. We almost lost him. Now she did blink, stared wide-eyed at them, stretching the muscles around each orb. He's okay now. What about the regenerator? Durant shrugged. Did the best we could with what we had, but there were still a few items we couldn't find replacements for. He smiled wanly. Just enough of them to cause the entire system to fail before we can get home. Unless Dan and Charlie can do better, or can find a way to bypass what we haven't got. Suddenly he turned quiet, looked around in confusion. So did Booth. So did McCrae. Something had happened. There was something missing. They all realized what had happened at the same time. The turbulence, the jostling of the ship, had vanished. The ship was as still as the inside of a coffin.